if I'm not thinking, how do I make E1 famous, I'm not doing my job right.
Welcome to Future of Fandom, the podcast where leagues, teams, and federations learn how to turn passive viewers into loyal superfans through gamification, loyalty, and next-gen engagement. Let's build what's next together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the podcast Future of Fandom. Today, we're super happy to have Laurence with us. Hi, Laurence. How are you?
Hi, Sam. I'm good, thanks. Nice to be with you.
Well, great to have you too. We actually don't know each other. We were just discussing this. So happy for you to introduce yourself to our audience, but to me also.
Well, great to meet you. I'm Chief Content and Product Officer at E1 Series. E1 Series is the world's first electric powerboat racing championship. We've got teams owned by some of the biggest stars in sport and entertainment, including LeBron James and Tom Brady and Will Smith. And my background is I was a TV producer making sports shows for 25 years.
Nice. Well, let's dive directly into that background before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of E1. You've been across different, very pioneering organizations in sports, right? Moving from Hawkeye to Formula E, and now E1. What drew you to starting a sport from scratch with E1, and how did you get involved in that business?
So I've been really lucky in my career to be involved in some sort of revolutionary moments in sport. So I was one of the producers on the first IPL in 2008, and then was part of the team that brought the Paralympics to Channel 4, was part of the first 34th America's Cup, which is when the America's Cup moved to foiling with Larry Ellison's investment. And I joined Formula E at the scale-up stage, so just at the beginning of its third season. And about 2.5 years ago, the CEO of E1, Roddy Basso, gave me a call and said, look, we're starting this new thing. How do you feel about coming in? And the truth is, I was envious of the people that had been at the previous events I've been involved with from the beginning. He'd done all the planning, who'd got it from PowerPoint to product. So it wasn't a hard decision to say yes.
So it's not necessarily that you've been lucky to be in early stage companies. You're actually searching for this. This is what excites you.
Yeah, I'm one of those mad people that find startup life fun. I think it's a slightly challenging existence because you never have enough money, you never have enough people, and you know your resources are always going to be limited. But the feeling of victory when it goes well is worth all of the pain.
Yeah, not that I know any other kind of way, but I think I prefer that to the processes and long political decisions when you start being a bigger organization. So the workflow. So I can relate to that. And so tell us a little bit more about E1. What are you guys delivering? You're obviously at a scale where you're 40-ish now, if I'm not wrong. So help us understand for the people who don't know what E1 is doing exactly.
So E1 races are foiling electric race birds, the E1 race bird, all around the world. So we've been on 4 continents now in our 12 races, the Middle East, in Europe, in Africa, and the Americas, in incredibly luxurious, cool, glamorous locations like Lake Como and Monaco, and we were in Miami 3 weeks ago. And our teams are owned by these sort of superstars of sport and entertainment, but also the pilots are really interesting. So we're a gender parity sport. Each team has one male and one female pilot, and they contribute evenly to the team's performance. It's a bit like F1, except on water. So we have a quali day and then a race day, and at the end of it, we crown the champion.
I have to say, I met probably somebody from your team recently. I was like, I could do your job. Like, I could go to all those nice places with the high speed boats and like new competition. That sounded like something that was nice and appealing. And so, where are you at? And so, you're in season number 2.
We're in between seasons 2 and season 3. So we started in 2024, in January 2024. 5 races that year, 7 races this year. There should be 8 races next year, starting in January 23rd.
So, what's the type of audience that we're looking at, both from an in-venue perspective as well as from on digital platforms?
So on digital platforms, we do really well, and that's largely because of the amazing reach of our team owners. So we're obviously a new sport and have a building audience, but the team owners between them have a reach of 1 billion. So when they help amplify our content, we do really, really well. Last year, we did 630 million video views in 5 races, and we're on track for a sort of similar ratio this year. In terms of in-venue, it really depends on where we are. So some of our events are big on-site audiences. So this year, Qatar and Lagos had tens of thousands of people there. But then we also do sort of very small bespoke events like Lake Como, where we might have a few hundred people in hospitality.
Interesting. So two questions in one actually from there, because you have big right holders, right? You mentioned the zone amongst others, but you also have that appeal of having owners that have a huge reach. How do you strategize on the distribution of content between those channels who have the rights to your content and on the other side the reach that you can get? And what are the major platforms from which you actually get that those 630 million video views you said?
Yeah. So in season one, our focus was Instagram. And that was because that's largely where our team owners play. So it made sense to focus. And I'm sure that's something we'll come on to is when you're a startup, you have to focus because you can't do everything.
Yep.
So yeah, Instagram was the primary vehicle for that, although we also had a bit of success on Facebook. And one of our team owners is Didier Drogba. He has a big following on Facebook in Africa, where it's a more important platform than perhaps it is now in Central Europe. And so yeah, we did really well on Facebook. And then managing the balance between broadcast platforms, digital platforms, and what we do on other people's platforms is really interesting. One, we don't have a lot of control over what the team owners may or may not post. We do our best to give them everything they can have. And when they
VOD,
come
right? VOD or live as well?
yeah, they do some very reactive stuff around events, particularly when they're at an event.
Yep.
So we give them all the tools that they might need and provide them as much content. And we have what we call an ethos of creative collaboration across the series. So rather than charging people to access our media asset management system or charging people to bring cameras on site or being Formula One management about how we deal with things, we just give everybody the keys to all the content.
Nice. And so they decide from there, but only on video on demand once again, right? Like the live rights are exclusively with your media partners.
Yes, that's right. So we do have partners have exclusivity, like for example, CBS in
Yep.
in the US, which means that we can't just put everything live out on channels. But our races are 9-10 minutes long, and the agreements allow us to put out a couple of minutes of race content really close to live. So yeah, it's not a restriction for it. It's not a problem.
Nice. So big networks for visibility, with whom you were lucky enough to strike deals. The reach of your investors in the competition, that's really interesting. And just as we funnel that down, right? Like in terms of like user acquisition on one side, you are also testing some super niche technology. So you were one of the first ones to work on the Extended Reality Sports Alliance with Qualcomm and HBS amongst others. Tell us a little bit more about this initiative. I know that there's a quite a big group now that's after that are working on this project. Tell us what was appealing to you and what was the idea behind it for you?
About 10 years ago, I introduced augmented reality into the Formula E host broadcast with something called Attack Mode, which is actually came out of a piece of digital content where we kind of put Mario Kart type activations into some sports video, and it became part of the sport. And I am really interested in emerging tech and especially extended reality. So when I heard about the XRSA, I was intrigued. And one of the things that I knew that would be helpful for them is we have control of everything. Our sites are reasonably small. We don't have loads of broadcasters there. We have control of nearly all of our rights. And I know everybody on site. So if we need to get something done, it's a reasonably easy place to work, an E1 site. So we started speaking to them, and there's a really visionary lady called Lucy Tran-Win who is leading the alliance. And when we started to get into what was possible, there's a few things that are really helpful and distinct about E1. One is we have tons of real-time data. Two, we already have an Unreal Engine backbone, which is what we use to put our partners into our broadcast product. So we don't have boards all around our race course like you would on a racetrack. We do all that with augmented reality. So we're kind of already in this world. Our tech stack allows us to do augmented reality. We also do virtual reality. We're building out gaming around that same backbone. And then so when we started talking to the XRSA about that, they were really interested.
So that is more on the watching the content live, right? Experience. But as you said, you're also looking into the gaming space. What are your ambitions now that you have that Unreal Engine that unlocks a ton of possibilities? And probably, I'm assuming, looking at the FIFAs of this world and with the EA game now, versus it was FIFA in the back? Like, is part of the idea of building the IP and owning the end-to-end experience there?
What we're really trying to do is talk to fans of all demographics and ages, and I am convinced that young people want more than a lean back viewing experience, particularly from a new sport. And we can take risks and do things that other more established sports can't. So the vision really is that while my wife and I might sit back on our sofas and watch E1 on a horizontal screen,
Yeah.
a rectangle, my son sits next to us with a headset on and he takes part in the race. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. But you want to build the game for it as well.
Yeah, we're building the game. We're building the game. So the game will be ready. We had a roadmap conversation this week actually with the developers, and we're building out a beta product which is ready to go. In fact, we were really close to getting one of the team owners to take part virtually in the race in Miami, but it didn't quite happen. So Jeddah next time in January we're going to do that. And yeah, the game's good to go. We're beta testing it, and feedback so far is really good.
Yeah, and that's just from a business perspective on my side is super interesting, right? To go get the users where they currently are. What's better than a game for kids to play with and have fun with to become fans of the sport? Because it's a blank page for you, right? Like that gives you the leverage and the possibility of doing a lot of things. And I think that that's what one of the things that must be exciting from your perspective.
Absolutely. The thesis is that to get a new fan for a sport, you kind of need to start talking to them when they're between the ages of 8 and 10. And there aren't loads of XR experiences out there currently. So while the devices are coming thick and fast, and Samsung have launched a really interesting one in the last couple of months, there isn't loads of content there. So if we can be out there with something that's innovative and groundbreaking, there's a good chance that we can start to acquire some of that really important younger generation for E1.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's the power of the blank page, but there's also the means of a startup, right? And so how, like, considering all those factors, right? You had to make some decisions at the beginning of the story. Like, what are the things that you are doubling down on, and what are the things that you see as future concepts for your organization?
It's a great question because necessity drives our roadmap, and it was necessary for us to have augmented reality because we had to give exposure to our brand partners in the broadcast product, which meant that we had this Unreal Engine backbone, which opened up this opportunity to create the game and to do virtual reality. And so we made a small investment, and we're trying to spin that out into a huge commercial opportunity. So that's the Unreal Engine side. And then we were talking earlier about how we had to sort of focus on Instagram in year one. And in year two, we've broadened that out a bit, and we started trying to create some engagement on TikTok, and making some forays onto YouTube as well. But you can't do everything, or you can't do everything to the standard that I would like to do it, when you have the limited resources, both human and capital, that we do. So yeah, we have to be really focused.
Yeah. And so you're relating a lot to the fan engagement on social media platforms, right? And it makes sense. It's the beginning of the journey. It's the top of the funnel. It's about acquisition. It's about views. It's about people engaging there. What are the next steps of your strategy? Are you going to start looking to have this engagement more on your proprietary platforms? Like, what's the vision that you have beyond the content and the reach now in terms of, like, being a future thinking organization and capturing data and being in control of all of this? Like, what are the next steps in your plan?
So I think I'll talk about the sort of the objective rather than the platform. So I think when I wake up, if I'm not thinking, how do I make E1 famous, I'm not doing my job right. And so what I need to do is make people care about this sport. And the way that we're going to get them to care about this sport is to start, I think, to transfer the equity that fans of the team owners have in their heroes, whether that be LeBron James or Tom Brady or Will Smith, into the pilots that race for their race teams. And they are brilliant characters, by the way. We have awesome characters in our race series. I think one of the things we didn't know when we started was, are the characters in the boats going to be compelling enough to create great content? They're amazing. So I have an open goal, really. I've got the characters that people will care about if I can get the information about them out there, if I can get fans to engage with them. I'm pretty confident that we can get them to care about the sport through these characters.
Yeah. And you also said one of your quotes is that you need to create something that's much more immersive than just watching TV. What do you think is not working currently? Like when you look at your sport and the novelty and the traction that you're getting, right, and the public figures that bring people on board, shifting that attention to the actual athletes. How can you help that happen?
We need to get into the human stories of these athletes, and make people care about whether they win or lose. We need to do that on the platforms that people are already consuming content on, whether that be the big streamers. So obviously, every sport dreams of a drive to survive, and that would be number one on my list of dear Father Christmas. If you're listening, number one on my list is give me Drive to Survive 3-1. Number two, um, let's help these guys tell their own stories on their own platforms and help amplify them on our platforms. So that's the spirit of creative collaboration. They have access to all the content. We are absolutely focused on giving them the material they need to tell their stories around our series in particular. And then number three, how do we get people to discover us if they're not already following one of the team owners or our amazing cast of characters? So that's a hard one.
And what's the user persona of your drivers? You said it's mixed, which is very
Yeah.
interesting, right? To attract a variety of different people to the platform. But what's the typical user persona of the athletes running an E1 series?
So they're like we have 11 different nationalities, and obviously some male, some, well, half male, half female, and they come from a variety of backgrounds. So we have a former F1 test driver. His name's Danny Kloss. He's a Spanish guy now living in Miami. Incredible character, over 1 million followers on Instagram. Super good on camera, and really engaging. Very fast as well, which is good. And then we have a lady called Sarah Price who races for Will Smith. She's a motorcycle rider, but also does rallycross and has been a TV stunt person. I think she was in one of the Jumanji films. Extraordinary character.
Yeah.
Really fun, great on camera. And then we have some Scandies who maybe don't have the sort of natural ability on camera that you get from Americans who are just so good at it, but have rich stories and great senses of humor and are really fast at what they do. So Timmy Hansen, who races across multiple sports, including Extreme H, and does other rallycross stuff. He drives in our series, as does a guy called Eric Stark, who's a traditional powerboat racer, and they have good stories too, although maybe not quite as fun as being a Jumanji stunt driver.
Yeah, that is helpful to get a fan base to begin with. But I guess you need different personalities, right? It's not a US world only. So that's interesting. Just moving from the more so we talked a little bit about the distribution, the acquisition of the users, like how to put emphasis from an editorial perspective on the athletes and not only on the owners. But one of the things that we noticed is that on the production side of things, obviously you have a great scenery and you have a great sport for it, but nonetheless you did win the best international sports program at the sports broadcast sports awards very recently against organizations that had definitely much higher budgets. Hard to quantify, but definitely higher. What is the secret sauce to having won this competition, you think?
I think when you do what we do, um, it requires multiple specialist partners. So we have the guys who do the VR and the AR. We have incredible production company called Aurora, who have been the cutting edge of new sport for over a decade. We have an onboard camera specialist partner called Crossshore Media. We have amazing timing and data partner called Alkanor Systems. And really, the secret sauce is integrating all of those guys, making them feel like this is an important a production as anything else they work on.
Yeah.
And the potentially arrogant thing for me to say is it's about leadership, because I think we have to bring these people together, make them work to the best of their ability, and integrate them perfectly. And that there are multiple people who are part of that integration, including the producer from Aurora, Laura Watts, who's a fantastic motivator of people, and then really making them all work to a single mission, which is telling the stories of these extraordinary athletes on the water.
Yeah. And if you had to pick just one of the features that you guys put in place that you're very proud of on your side, what would it be in terms of one special camera, one special insight, one special immersive piece of content? Like if you had to pick one to describe to the audience, what would it be?
So I think our AR and VR are world class and best in class, in fact, leading. And we won another award last week at the Broadcast Tech Awards for the AR and the VR, which was really special because we were beating out like election programs who have £1 million budgets, multi-million pound budgets for their graphics.
Yeah.
And I care a lot about it. You mentioned I worked at Hawkeye. I think data visualization and using emerging tech to tell stories is something that I care passionately about. So the AR VR piece, I'm really proud of.
Nice. And then one thing that is very much less in under your control, but that is one of the realities that you have to cope with. You said, the E1 boats are very new technology, and so you can't really expect them to have, you're always subject to surprises. How do you adapt to that? Like, how do you anticipate all of that? How do you anticipate covering for the moments where it doesn't exactly pan out as you expect? And on the other side, what is fun to work on with those considerations at play?
The thing about the U1 race birds are that they're foiling electric race boats. No one's ever made one of these before. They are totally brand new technology. We're taking elements from 3 different sports, right? We're taking the hulls from a traditional powerboat. We're taking the foils from like the world of sailing, and then we're taking a powertrain from automotive, and we're turning that into a racing machine on the water. Not easy to do. So they are at the moment not as fast as other boats that people watch racing. So what do we do to try and make the content feel dynamic? So ideally, we try and shoot them as much as possible from cameras that are moving, so that there's a more of a sensation of speed. For example, I love it when we shoot them with the drone as much as possible. I think a drone that's moving not quite as fast as the boats, but moving pretty fast makes the content look really dynamic.
Nice. What's the speed of a boat? Like, was the maximum speed of a boat in a E1 series
So they'll
race?
go up to like 90 kilometers an hour, which when your butt's on the floor and you're on the water and you're foiling is fast enough, especially when they drop off the foils and bang back down onto the water. So pretty quick, but if people are used to watching powerboat racing with 6, 7, 8 outboard motors
Yeah.
on a rig, it's a different prospect.
Yeah, I was gonna say from a wide angle, it's probably not as impressive as on site or when you're in a drone.
No, no. When it's on a fixed camera on a wide angle lens, it doesn't feel as dynamic as when we get either close to the water with one of the awesome pan tilt zoom cameras that we have on top of the boat, or when we're shooting from a drone that's flying above them.
And if we look 2 or 3 years from now, like what would the E1 series product look like? One, holistically, two, from a content perspective, and three, from a digital perspective, because you're involved in those three topics. So happy to get a little breakdown of that.
Where we try to exist is at the intersection of sport and entertainment, and I think that if we can showcase the amazing places we race, as well as cover a dynamic racing product, and reveal the characters of these awesome people in the boats, then we're going to be winning. I think we do a pretty good job of some of that, but what we want to be doing is an excellent job of all of that. So from a broadcast perspective, getting more into the stories of the athletes and starting to build audience affinity with that's the aim. So I think over the next 2 or 3 years, shoulder content that gets into these characters and exposes their relationships with the owners. That's a big objective. From a digital perspective, more platforms and more content, and more collaboration between us, the athletes, and the teams. I think that's the objective on that front.
Interesting. More platforms, you mean more any platform, whether they be proprietary or social media.
That's right. So definitely want to be hitting the VR headsets with awesome content. Definitely want to be making more of a mark on YouTube in the next couple of years, which I think is a really exciting platform for anybody who's creating content or consuming content. And then more on TikTok. Maybe we need to be looking at like Weibo and some of the platforms that are bigger in China as well. So there's a lot of platforms out there, and we've had to be very focused in the first couple of years.
Tell us, how do we watch E1? What was the next big event that our audience should look out for? and how to start being engaged with E1.
So first of all, follow at E1 Series on all of the major social platforms. Secondly, go and have a look at our website, e1series.com. There you'll find how you can watch wherever you are. If you're in the US, we're on CBS Sports Network. If you're in the UK, we'll be on ITV. And you can find us on YouTube in loads of territories too.
Terrific. Can we wish you one thing for 2026?
Other than the docuseries that I've already asked Father Christmas for,
Yeah.
I would love, it's too many things, Sam. I think to have another season where we grow at the same rate would be extraordinary. And I'd be really proud if I could be sitting in here a year's time and say that we were growing at the same rate as we have been for the first 2 years, because it's going to get harder.
Nice. Lawrence, thanks a lot. Super fun, as mentioned. If you need a role on the team, happy to join as a support in one of the races. It sounds exciting, and I'm just very keen on actually seeing what a live event looks like on the pitch. It must be a nice mix of great content, great new sport, celebrities. It feels like the right mix for the new audience. So congrats on everything that you guys are building, and definitely looking out for what you guys are creating, and we'll keep looking out for it in the next upcoming months.
Thanks, Sam. You're very welcome. Come to an event next year.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to Future of Fandom. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and follow Live Like on LinkedIn for more conversations with the people shaping what's next in the world of sports and media. Until next time, keep building for fans, not just users.